All right, cool. Hi everybody. So I want to just do a really quick video on just how you can approach making your rig, as well as just the basics of animation and Play Blast in Maya. I could go into a lot of detail, but I think I'm just going to be really quick about this, just so y'all understand the basics. And then in class, I can talk about more advanced stuff or how to like smooth things out. So as you can tell, this is my butterfly rig, or it's just the model. And I've semi kind of made the rig just to experiment and to show y'all what it's going to look like. And so I have, if you see this in the outliner, this is actually a copy of my model, which I'm going to delete just so it doesn't get messy. And yeah, so right now I have my rig. I'll explain why this is out here later. This is what happens when you have an unfinished rig. But what I really highly recommend, which everybody should have done already, is to have all your model pieces and making sure you select on it, do edit, delete by type history, modify, freeze transformations, as well as I believe and also center pivot as well. Once your model is clean, you're set for rigging. I highly recommend making controls as the first thing that you do. So in this case, I've already gone in and named some, but I want to kind of show you the process of how to create the controls. You can create controls using the curves here. So there's a circle, square. I highly recommend circle, just because a square default is separated into 4 different lines, which can get kind of messy. And you can also design your own curves, but if you just want to be basic, circles work pretty great. And so all you have to do is select and create. In this case, I can move this over here. I highly recommend just moving in a particular axis, especially if you have to be like super careful. I like to hit F to focus in. If I'm not quite happy with where that's at, I just check all the different angles to see if I'm kind of like right in the center. I'm trying to make like just a control for this foot right here. And as you can see, looking in the attribute editor, every time I make a transformation, these numbers are changing, which is fine right now. But once we actually start rigging, we need to clean all of that up. And so right here, I'm going to just show you, for example, what's going on. So if I hit edit, delete by type, history, all of that stuff right here, all those transformations went away. I want to get rid of these numbers too, because these can affect our rig. And so I go to modify, freeze transformations, and all of that stuff zeroed out. My scale is all at 1. And the last thing I need to do, well, in this case, I really don't need to move the edit point, but I want to move the pivoting point of this mesh piece here. So one thing that I did is I kind of analyzed how I want my rig to move. Sorry, Miss Kitty is getting in the way. And I've already made these groups of all of my pieces. So I pretty much selected all the main pieces of the rig here, or the model right here. And I made it a group and I called it the main body group. And if you want to make a group of anything that you select that group and go to edit and just group. And then you can always double click to name things in the outliner. Oops, didn't mean to do that. So I want to double check because I've already gone and kind of like made some adjustments. Let's see here. This front right leg. Okay, so it looks like my pivot point is in the center, which is not where I want it to be. And there's a really quick, easy way to adjust that, which is by holding down D. Now you're actually going to be editing the pivot point. So I'm going to move this up here, right in here, kind of close to where what I'm trying to do is I want this leg to rotate around this sphere. And so to do that, I have to make sure that the pivot point is right exactly or pretty close to the center of the sphere. So each time I'm holding down D to only move that pivot point. And so I'm just going to scoot it kind of in here. So that's getting pretty close there. And so to show you as a whole what's going on, if you go into rotate mode, now this entire piece is rotating the exact way that I want it to go. So perfect. And so that's how I would start approaching these. So ideally, you probably want to go to each one of these pieces and move the pivot point for all of these geometry pieces. And so you're going to want to make sure to adjust that because you need to make sure that they're going to be rotating and moving at the exact way that you want to. So let me see if I can show a good example here. So it looks like, ooh, I do have some offsets, so that's probably not a very good example. But yeah, so what I have here, I showed different types of rigs. The default when you create your joints is an FK. This example right here is what we call IK, which is inverse kinematics. And basically what's going on is it's kind of acting along using kind of, the Pythagorean theorem to create the system where I have my end joint to my beginning joint, and then I can make these adjustments. So a lot of times, like if I just want them to like move forward, that's how I would approach that. But how in the world do we make that? And so kind of my method of making joints is to actually use locators, just because sometimes it's really hard to pinpoint exactly where you want these controls to go. And a really easy way is I like to go into shading and go into X-ray mode. Now my model's a little bit see-through, which is great because I want to have some locators in scene. So I already actually have some locators here, but I've hidden them just because it gets really messy. But I am going to create locator. Beautiful. So I have a new locator in my scene. But I want to put it exactly at the center of where I want my joints to be. So I'm going to move this guy right over here, hit F to focus, and get it pretty close to that center right here. Beautiful. Okay. And then I'm just going to do edit, lovely, duplicate, move back up here. And now I'm going to move this to this spear joint, because that's where I want my joints to rotate, is right at the center of this like spear that spear that I've created. Beautiful. All right, yeah. You can probably need to fine tune these, but for now, this is looking pretty good. All right, duplicating. I got to do 2 more times. So I need to get it to the center of this sphere right here. F to focus in. I always check all the different angles just to double check everything. There's a couple of hotkeys that can help you center them, but I don't remember them off the top of my head. And you can always just eyeball it in most cases. And then my last duplication to get this sphere right over here. Beautiful. Sometimes it can get really confusing through X-ray mode. So there's different ways to kind of view this. A lot of times you can hide the geometry. Okay, I think that's just about right. Okay, awesome. I already made, so I have this kind of confusing hierarchy, but I will share this model file with you. But I want to make sure that I move these locators in this area just so things are really nice and clean. Okay, I think right about there. Nope, go in here. It gets really tricky in the outliner. Okay, perfect. So now what I want to do is I want to create joints at these locator points. And so just to make sure I don't accidentally click on what I don't want to click on, I'm going to hide the geometry. Oops. I need to not hide the locators, which I think are in this group. So that's probably what's going on. So I'm selecting my model and my extra model piece, and I'm hitting H to hide it. And now I want to create some joints at these locations. And so to do that, I'm going to go into the rigging mode. You go to skeleton, create joints. And so there's a nice little hotkey. So if I hold down V, it creates a joint right where kind of like the nearest object is. So in this case, it's a locator. Sometimes it's really hard to see, but you can always make these bigger or thicker. I'm talking about the locators. So you start with kind of like that head joint. So this is going to be the parent to all these child joints. And then you go down the line, basically. So I'm holding down V again. So it created 2 joints. So this is the parent to the child. And then I continue down this chain until I have my joint structure. And so I'm going to hit Q to quit. And so now I've made these joints. And now you'll notice that right now they're pretty much not colorized because there's no skinning or binding to them yet. Also, I haven't created an FK handle. But like, so basically, if you really do want to make an FK rig, I'm sorry, lady, this is not the time to play. I am teaching. Y'all know if I ever brought Lady to class, she will be a menace. And so my next step is to actually, oh, one thing that you can do, I was double checking my notes, is if you want to lock a particular thing. So if you ever want to, let's say like this controller, I never want it to rotate, you can just select these attributes in the attribute editor, right click, and I believe it's, oh, you can lock selected. And so in this case, you can see how this is grayed out. I can never rotate. And so that can kind of help prevent you if you don't want something to move in a particular location. You can also select lock and hide. And so it'll just go away from the attribute editor and pretty much constantly. All right, so the next thing I want to show is how to make an IK handle. Okay, so we're going to, I believe, so this is where it gets really tricky. Some of these have already been parented, other cases they haven't yet. And that gets, I'll probably send little notes to do these. So to create that IK handle, you want to select the skeleton, which is up here. And I'm gonna go all the way down to create IK handle. Perfect. And so with this, you want to select the parent joint and then the child joint. So I'm gonna click here to here. Okay, beautiful. My IK handle has been made. All right, and hit Q to quit. So if I select, let's see here. I want to double check that this is working properly, but something in here is not quite right. Because ideally when we're selecting this bottom joint, this should be actually be able to rotate around, which it doesn't look like I did that properly. All right, give me 1 second. Okay, gotcha. I'm back. So I think what was going on is I was accidentally selecting a locator, so I hit all of the locators. And so to create that IK handle, I'm going to go to skeleton and create that IK handle. And I usually like to drag just to make sure I'm selecting the right thing. So you want to do the parent, which is the starting joint, all the way to the end joint down here, and I just drag here. Now that made my IK handle. I'm gonna hit Q to quit just in case I don't want to create another accidental IK handle. And what I usually like to do is I double check. So I'm here and I select kind of this end joint. So this little handle is kind of like this three-pronged shape here. And so now my handle is working properly. And so beautiful. So I'm gonna hit Control or Command Z because I'm on a Mac to undo and bring my model back. Okay, awesome. So the next step I want to do is I probably do need to double check. Oh, so now I can see that I have joints that are slightly off. And in this case, we're going to pretend that they're perfectly aligned. So the one thing I want to do is I just want to double check the pivot point of all of my geometry pieces. And so in this case, I need to double check that this one is working. So I'm going to hold down D just to move this pivot point to be more in the center of this sphere here. Awesome. Sorry, my kitty is also messing with more stuff again. She apparently wants to teach everybody how to use Maya. All right, cool. And then now we're going to select this geometry piece. I'm going to move that pivot point pretty close to that center of that sphere right there. While making sure I'm holding down D every time I want to move it. Awesome. Oop, went a little too far there. Okay. Nope. It's a tricky thing, these pivot points. There we go. Awesome. Close enough. All right, and now for the last, but not least. Oh, I actually got that pretty good on that time. Okay, awesome. So the next step that we want to do, and so right now we were doing the IK handle, and now we want to do a skinning. And so in order to do that, let's see here. Awesome. Actually, we need to probably check the hierarchy before we do any kind of skinning. So I have my locator group. This is that NURBS. I'm just going to delete that so we don't have a really messy mess. So kind of like in my hierarchy, I made a joints group here, and I want to relocate all those joints into this group just so everything, oops, that's not what I want. Need to move this into the joint group. Wonder why it's doing a transform. That's something I do not want to have. Let's see, move it into here. Let's see, edit. Oh, here, delete by type, history. Nope, that didn't work either. All right, so I'm gonna hope. Yeah, that didn't help either. So most likely I probably needed to make these joints in this hierarchy before I did that IK handle. Probably what's going on. And then I need to make sure I move this IK handle where I had my previous IK handle, which is not in the front leg. I'm trying to think where I had it. I think it's actually in here. Nope. Oh, I put in my controls. That's where it is. So if I open up the controls, I already have that IK handle here. And that's because I actually parented it, I believe. So just to double check that all that fun stuff is working. Actually, I did that at the very end, so we're not going to worry about that. So right now, we're going to try the skinning just to make sure that all works properly. So to do that, we want to select the geometry. In this case, this should be the back left leg. What I'm actually going to do is move it out of this hierarchy group because we're going to use it to bind. So I already have this selected. This is already in a group. Oh, before I do that, I need to adjust. You see how that pivot point's at that center? We don't want that right there. We want it right kind of the center location of this sphere. Okay, make sure. Holding down D again. All right, cool. Pretty close. All right, so I can do that. So we select this joint, or not joint, we're selecting our geometry. And then I'm going to want to hold command. I'm checking my notes. This gets really complicated, so you're going to want to have little notes off to the side. And then we want to do the joints that we want to actually add onto. And so I start with this top joint going all the way down. And then I go to skin. And I'm going to hit the little window next to bind skin. So at the default is joint hierarchy. This is normally what you do if we have, let's say, a human character where we're going to do some paint weighting. But for now, we're just going to do selected joints. You can keep everything else here and hit apply. Okay, awesome. Now, what should happen is if we select our IK handle, the rest of our rig is going to move, which it looks like it's moving properly. So yay, yay, yay. And you'll notice that when you have a skinned joint system, it starts creating that hierarchy, which are these like color coordination. So like the closer you are to that root joint is kind of the warmer colors getting to like that green or blue on the outside. Like I said, you're going to want to make sure your joints are a little more aligned than I am, but for practice purposes, that's what we're going to have. The last thing we need to do is to make sure that these IK handle is properly attached to this joint. So I always like looking at my outliner because it's almost like a visual history of what's going on. And so what we really need to do is make sure that leg control. So what did I do? I made the leg control to the IK handle. And so to my notes, all right, cool. I think I know what we're going to do. So what we're going to do next is select the control, which in this case is this NURBS circle, which is the parent, and then command IK handle. So we're actually here, it's control. Control IK handle, come on. Or nope, we were just going to hit shift. We're going to just do that just to be sure. Okay, awesome. And so that's going to be my child. IK is the child in this. And then we're going to go to constrain, parent constraint. Awesome. So what should be happening is if we select this control and move it around, our entire model is moving correctly. I'll probably have to adjust the angle of these. So you see how like those are pretty stationary. That has to do with kind of like how similar they are as an angle. So the more of a angle, so we have a more kind of like right angle versus this obtuse angle here, so we get more dynamic movements with it. But now it looks like everything is working properly. So yay, we can all kind of like be really happy about that. And so my last test is to double check that my basically all the controls are working, which they're not because I see my IK handle is out here. So I need to move you, let's see where you're at, onto this back right leg. Okay, awesome. So that should still be working properly. So I'm going to hit the up arrow, which means I go up the chain. So now I'm selecting the butterfly group. So this is kind of like selecting your master control. And everything is working properly, thank God. Because what I was running into before is if I did not move these geometry pieces out of the order, I was getting some double transformation. So what I highly recommend is if you run into like your model scaling really big, it's probably because it's under too many influences. So I just keep moving it up and higher in that hierarchy, in this case, entirely out of the hierarchy. You see how the model's not selected, but it still is being manipulated. That would be my best guess of how to figure out if you have any weird things going on. Okay, so yay, this is pretty much how you do IK handles. I'm going to show you how to really quickly do something without any joints. So in this case, I already have my butterfly wing out here. So my right wing, I've already grouped everything together. I already moved the pivot point to be in the middle. And so my next step, in this case, we're just going to use parent, not even a parent constraint. We're just parenting. And so I'll write this down for you. So when you're doing parenting, you go from child and then select the parent. But if you're doing a constraint, you go parent, then child. Even constraints, you follow that order, even if it's a parent constraint. It's all confusing. I'll write it down so you won't mess it up. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make my wing control. And so to do that, we have to select the child, which in this case is this wing group, which is right wing group. And then I'm going to hold down shift and also select this is the control I made and just hit P to parent. And so if I select this lovely little control, what should be happening is if I rotate it, now my wing is rotating. Yay, glorious. There's different ways you can go about it, but that's just my quick and dirty way. Next thing I want to show is just basically how we animate. And so in this case, I'm hitting the up arrow, going up the chain. And so animation is pretty basic. So I always like to make sure to, you want to put a key here, and to just placing a key is by hitting S. So I'm setting a key. And let's say around 18 frames later, the butterfly is going to go up here. So I hit S again, and then it's going to stay in the air for another kind of like how many seconds? Hit S. So it's going to be stationary in this place for this long. And then we're gonna all the way, it's gonna go all the way back down to 0 down here. And a really kind of like, if you want to be super extra about it, you can actually type in numbers here. So if I just hit 0, awesome. And then I just hit key, and I can key that exactly. Oh, I hit S, 0. Okay. And then beautiful. And so in this case, if I just hit 0, awesome. And so that should be pretty close to what I want to do. All right, so if I just kind of like go through the outliner, I can see it does its like up and down motion. And then the next thing that I want to do is to actually put some commands here on my control. And so at this case, I actually, right here, I'm going to put S to put a key here. And then to kind of pretend that he's like beating his wings to kind of like do that takeoff. I'm rotating them down here. And I'm going to keep it pretty close there for a short bit and bring this up a little bit to do S here. And then I kind of want, so I'm thinking of like the follow through. So I don't want it to exactly line up right when he stops, because I want it to kind of swing back. And so, and then to go all the way down. we're going, oops, yeah. So I probably need to make a different control because I keep thinking that that is my actual rotation. And so when I select everything off and I move this here, I'm going to hit the play button down here. It's really fast, probably because I have it at 20 frames per second. But if I slowly do it, now I kind of see that he's floating and going back down. And so there I have some basic animations. If I do want to clean some things up, in this case, let's say I want to make some adjustments here to my actual control. So I'm going to go to Windows, Animation Editors, Graph Editor. Oh, right. So this is what we were talking about previously. So I already have this control selected, and these are all the different aspects to it. So like right here, we already have some really nice rotation going on, but you can go in here and start like kind of pretty much editing a lot of these pieces. So in this case, so yeah, select this. You can kind of like fine tune some of these aspects. If I want it to be a little more, let's see, there we go. Adding some just more smoothness in here. I'm gonna have this go up about here. And what that does is it kind of just like adds a little bit more hang time when you do your animation. So in this case, it's kind of like what we probably should be doing is the animating squash and stretch exercise, but a lot of times this is thinking of how that ball is kind of arcing in the air. And so that helps a lot too. I actually may want to bring this down a lot like that. And then straighten this out. And actually try that. Beautiful. Let's see how that changes up. All right, so basically he like flaps really hard and then it really kind of stays in the air for a really long time. All right, let's say I'm kind of happy with this and I'm gonna do a really quick play blast. So all you gotta do is go into animation, go to playback and play blast. But we're gonna hit the little window here because I want to show you all the different options. In this case, you can do the time slider or let's say start to end. In this case, I think my animation was ending somewhere around here. So let's say 60 seconds. All right, and I want to keep everything else here. You're gonna want it to do, you don't want to probably do images yet. We're gonna just do H.264, which is a video format. You can do window. I highly recommend render settings. So just to show you my render settings real quick, I have them pretty big. I have it 1080. 720 is good too. And yeah, you don't really have to do too much. Sometimes like if your window is really kind of, you're getting pixely, you're gonna want to make sure that anti-aliasing is turned on. So you can do that by hitting viewport 2.0 and hitting a little window next to it. Anti-aliasing, and I've already checked it on here. So I'm gonna hit apply. We got our play blast going. Woohoo! All right, you probably can't see it, but I have it pulled up in my other window of the actual play blast, and it looks pretty good. And that's about all you have to really do for this assignment. I can do more complicated stuff later, but I want to keep this video pretty short. Let me know if you got questions.